There is always that passion and that enthusiasm at the beginning of the year to actually set goals and then subsequently mobilize resources to attain those goals. However, according to research, about 92% of people who always set New Year's resolution eventually never see the realization of their goals. Actually, about 95% of people who set those goals just give up 2 months into the new year. And so in today's video, we'll be sharing the 7 time tested things that you need to know and how you can, more importantly, take advantage of these things and join the top 1% of people who always see some success in every single endeavor that they set their minds to achieve. And so if you're new here, my name is Nana. I hold a master's degree in business finance, and on this channel, we discuss everything personal finance and personal development. And so without further ado, we'll just go to the first point, and that is to get your normal life in order. So before you go on to even think about making all those 6 figures or going on to see success in any other field, what you have to consider is the immediate terrain that you actually find yourself in there. So think about the basic things that you have to do, like the relationships that you're building in the family, your colleagues at work, and how you can be more useful to them in that situation. If you were to think about the basic things and then you master the basic things, they say charity begins at home. That is the first stepping stone that will subsequently guarantee you attaining every single goal that you set for yourself to attain in life. This brings us to the second habit of the top 1%, and that is they always seek to be the contrarian. So that simply means that you have to stand out. You don't have to move with the crowd or don't go with the ties. Try and then be unique in any way or form that you can. This is how Warren Buffett puts it. He says that anytime that people are being fearful on the stock market, that is the time that you have to be greedy. And anytime that people are greedy in the stock market, that is the time that you have to be fearful. So that is one of the hallmark of the ultra rich, and that really influences most of their decisions. In that Warren Buffett buys more stock when he sees people selling so much stock on the stock market, and he sells so much stock when he sees people trooping in to buy several stock on the stock market. And that is one of the ultimate investment strategies that is adopted for several decades, and it's worked for him in that he knows that if you're to go with the average people in the economy, you're going to make average decisions. And so if you really want to beat them to it, then you have to do the exact opposite of what they do, and that includes you becoming a contrarian or standing out. This brings us to the third habit of the ultra rich, and that is they listen to what people fear and do it. So human beings are wired in that we are risk averse naturally. So no one wants to take on something that is likely going to cause them their peace of mind or probably wipe away the progress that they've made over the years. But what the ultra rich know is that having to take on risk and then trying to mitigate those risks eventually will turn into one thing, that is opportunity, which also comes with one thing, and that is money. So if you really want to build wealth or to sustain yourself in the future, possibly, then there's one thing that you need to know. You have to go through several stages of failure, and that is what the average person wouldn't like to go through. Perceive failure as a mere invitation or a mere opportunity for you to try something new and to get better at whatever craft or whatever goal that you set your mind to actually go on to achieve. And that if you're able to convince yourself like this, then eventually you're going to see success, because the average person wouldn't even like to see the failure at all. So they shy away from failure, and that is what also prevents them from actually becoming successful subsequently in life. This brings us to the fourth habit of the top 1%, and that is to be a little selfish. And I know this might sound a little bit controversial. However, listen to me before you go on to judge. One thing that you need to know and to do in life is to learn to say no to several things in life. And that is something that I learned very later in life. For example, when I had the opportunity to serve as a student representative council president in uni, I was always out there having to solve so many problems that sometimes those problems actually came at the expense of several hours of lectures and several hours of coursework that I had to do and then submit. That really went on to affect me so much, because students would intentionally delay, knowing very well that you would go and then represent them or you would help them to solve their problems on campus. And that was one of the most detrimental things that I actually faced at my uni level, and that was simply because I didn't know how to be selfish. And so I always went along with people and then always tried to help them, but that really came at a cost in that I was really affected that semester. There are several courses that I would have otherwise scored better grades, but I couldn't score them simply because I spent several hours focusing on other people's problems as opposed to my problem. And then at this point, what you need to know is that if you really want to join the top 1%, you have to try as much as possible to fill your cup first before going out there to pour, because an empty cup cannot pour out. And so what you have to do is to try as much as possible and then settle your own desires, try and settle your interest, but don't do that at the expense of other people out there. However, you need to prioritize your goals and find that definite chief aim, and that is one of the surest ways for you to actually see success and to join the 1% in life. This brings us to the fifth habit of the top 1%, and that is to put in 11,000 hours and then specialize in one particular field. So according to Napoleon Hill, one of the key things that actually set successful people apart from people who don't see any level of success throughout their lives is simply because of specialized knowledge. So rich people tend to focus on one thing and then they channel all their resources and their attention into making that thing better or succeeding at that field before subsequently moving on to do several other things. As opposed to this, the bottom 99% set several goals and then somewhere along the line, they're actually confused. They don't know what to focus on, or they have too limited resources to focus on all those things at the same time. And that eventually leads to them actually having some diminished motivation and then subsequently giving up on their goals altogether. If you're setting out to achieve any goal or to becoming successful in life, then there's one thing that you need to know. That is to specialize or to focus all your energy, your skill set, your talent on one particular thing before going out there subsequently after realizing some success in that field to diversify. And that is one thing that the ultra-rich tend to do. Anytime that they are setting out to build wealth, they focus on one company or they focus on one industry, and then subsequently they diversify their income streams afterwards. This brings us to the sixth habit of the ultra-rich, and that is to set an impossible goal and tell everyone. So I'll tell you my goal at this point. My goal is to become a multi-billionaire and give several tens of billions of dollars out to philanthropy, simply because there are people out there. Today I was discussing with my wife in the shower. Millions of kids are dying simply because of starvation and poverty. As opposed to this, about 2/3 of whatever we produce as food on the earth's surface actually goes down the drain, in that it is wasted at the end of the year. So to me, it doesn't really make any sense. And that is why I'm enthused to actually pursue my financial goals and then subsequently bridge that gap between kids having to die and then food actually going waste. Because if we are to find several ways of preserving these foods and then channeling all that through several effective and efficient mediums to feed these kids, then we are going to have several great people and several great leaders in the world subsequently. And that is the ultimate goal that I'm pursuing. And that is one thing that you need to know. If you really want to set out to join the 1%, you must have a goal that actually makes you sound quite stupid before people. But before they would realize, you would consistently and marginally contribute in accordance with that goal. And subsequently, you're going to see the realization of that goal, irrespective of whatever challenges or whatever tempest that you faced along the line. This brings us to the last habit of the ultra-rich, and that is to find joy in everything that you do. So one of the key things that you need to know if you really want to go on to become successful or to become productive in life is to actually incorporate some form of joy into every single thing that you do, be it in the family or probably even at the workplace. If you're able to incorporate or actually bring some form of joy or to find some form of fun along with whatever processes that you execute in accordance with, you are likely going to see some success. Research is proving that productivity is positively correlated with feeling good. And so at this point, try and ask yourself the simple question: what can I do to actually incorporate some form of fun into this cumbersome process that I actually go through every single day at the workplace? Or what can I do to actually make people around me much more happy? And that is one of the key things that would eventually lead you to success. If you were to take someone like Warren Buffett, once again, he does one thing, and that is to pick stocks. He invests people's money. That is something that he really loves. So aside the money and everything, recently in his last stakeholder meeting, he went on to give the great advice that if you really want to see success or to come close to anything that is seen in life, then there's one thing that you need to know. You need to actually do away with a conscious mind of having to focus on money and then focus on anything that you do that you feel so happy when doing that. And that is what would eventually lead you to the success and eventually becoming financially free. And so at this point, if you truly want to join the 1%, then find that one thing that makes you feel so joyful anytime that you're doing, and then try and monetize that subsequently. And that is the surest way that you're going to see success. Thank you for spending time with us, and see you in the next video.